Welcome to this preview of the new Client Workbook. Hi, I'm Joe Rourke, Director of Product Management here at Autotask, and today we're going to take a look at the new Client Workbook. Now, the previous workbooks, the sales and the service workbooks, were all focused on showing you analytics and trending within your organization. There was some capability to drill into a client level on the Explore screen. What we've done in the Client Workbook is we made it totally client-focused in terms of performance for a specific client. And we added the capability to generate a PDF report. So this is actually a report that you can bring out to your client, and it'll actually show you graphing information that's associated with the client. You can also store it as a PDF or email it. What I'm going to do in this presentation is go through the capabilities of the workbooks for you. And again, this is going out in beta today on September 13th, and it'll be coming to everyone in the next several weeks. So thank you very much. So here we are on the Client Report Workbook, and as I said, this is very similar to the service workbooks, except it's very client-centric. You have a home page, much like the other workbooks, where you can click on Refresh to refresh your data. There's also a configuration tab for use in setup. Put in your initial setup information, your time zone information. You'll have your company name set up. The main difference in terms of this workbook is it's all driven off of a main screen that allows you to specify which accounts and what kind of criteria you want to include on the various tabs that have the graphs. So different than the Explore screen, which included both the 16 graphs on that main screen along with the slicer information that's on the service workbooks. This actually breaks out the Explore onto its own page because it allows you to provide better presentations for the information on the data that you want to include in the report. So clicking on one of these items like an account will actually filter all the information on things like the created or the completed or the SLA first response, SLA resolution survey pages of the report that are being created. There's also a cover page of the report. You can modify the information in terms of it being presented on the cover page to include your logo, whatever information you wanted. And we automatically put in and build out a table of contents page based on the information that you're going to include in the report. The best way to step through this is really probably to create a report, and I'm going to do that right now. I can choose any of the individual accounts, and when I do, what I can do is click on Create Client Report, and it brings me up a form that I can use to create a report for, in this case, Future Tech. I also have the option to create a batch of client reports. This would create a PDF for every one of my customer accounts that I have tickets for. I could also create a batch of reports that were focused on resources, so it would show all of the graphs associated with the resource, the tickets that they had dealt with, what their SLA performance and survey information had been. What we're going to do first is create this client report. The customer name here is used for the information that's on the first page of the report. It's also used for the file name of the PDF. You have an output folder where the PDFs will be created, and then I can choose the sections that I want to include on the report. And the sections, each one of the sections, I can choose which ones I want. I may not be currently tracking SLA resolution, and I can say not to include that section in the report. And if I do, the table of contents automatically would exclude that information, and the page numbers would be adjusted so that the report had the proper sections with the proper page numbering. What I'm going to do is create a report for Future Tech here. And when I choose to create a report, one of the things that you'll see is it says Publishing of the Report. And that really kind of created the PDF report. And I have my PDF opening up in a browser window. It may open up in Adobe for you. And what this report does for me, and you can do, is you can go down through and take a look at the report. You have a cover page. Again, you would put your own information here. And then what you can do, maybe I'll just make it a little smaller. And then what you do is you go down to page 1. And page 1 of the report will be the table of contents that would include the data that you were presenting, new tickets, completed tickets, SLA first response compliance. This information, again, is focused on your client, so the end user. So to explain the report to them, if they were picking it up, if you weren't stepping through it with them, they would get this kind of summary. And what they can do is page through the information. So on the first page we have new ticket information. And what you'll see in terms of the new ticket information is that there's going to be a series of about 6 graphs on each page. And we also include under each graph information that kind of explains the importance of the information. Gives also some information about, some comparative information about how you operate on an organization as a whole. So if we take a look at some of these graphs, let's just expand this a little bit more. In terms of new tickets, when were your tickets created? So this will tell them a trending by week of how many tickets were created per week for them. So they can see how they've been trending and maybe indicate, and then basically looking at maybe why they may be trending. Maybe there was an issue here in terms of this volume of tickets that has started coming on, or maybe they were a new client, maybe have taken on some additional services. But really what you want to do is take a look at a trend of information and be able to discuss with your client the trending. Are they trending up in terms of tickets? Are they trending down in terms of tickets? You have the tickets by create day. And one of the things that you'll see is that under each graph we provide default, you can change it for yourself, but we provide basically a little bit of an explanation. This is saying, you know, on which day of the week do you submit the most tickets? You meaning the end client, because they're reading it. And in here they'd be saying, oh, I create most tickets on Tuesday. And from the standpoint of when you're talking to them, you know, your company uses the information about what has the most volume to properly staff for expected high traffic days. And then IT Services Group is the name of the company name of the workbook. So your name would appear here automatically, and it says, we received the most tickets on Tuesday. So they actually line up properly with what you as an organization will receive, but it might be that your client submits the most tickets for some reason on Mondays and your volume is highest on Wednesdays. Again, just giving them some overall view of where you're actually staffing for the most volume. Then we have some of the information here is tickets by create time of day. When tickets are created, have the tickets that were created for their system been created in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and overnight. And interestingly, one of the things you'll see is that it also compares and says that as a business, IT Services Group receives, you know, over 50% of our tickets outside normal business hours. Now this is including remote monitoring tickets, any kind of alerts that you're receiving, or any type of patch management. And one of the things when you're going over with your client their data, I think it's important to reiterate the fact that it isn't just a help desk. It isn't just when they call, because the value of having a managed service contract and the fact that you are using a remote monitoring tool is that they don't have to call you. So this is kind of reiterating the kind of ticket volume and the fact that you're busy when they're not, may not even be in the office. And then you're showing a distribution by create time based on the week. So has there been changes over time in terms of the distribution of tickets? Again, that's kind of important because are you getting things that more tickets that are created overnight or in the evening? Then we also show most active create day time. So this is showing you Tuesdays, of course, are the busiest. And what time Tuesdays? Well, in this case, you can see it's 2 o'clock at 3 o'clock on Tuesdays. They submitted the most tickets. So there might be something that's going on associated with that. You might have the office manager who builds up all their tickets at once and submits them, but really kind of gives them a flavor for when they're submitting the tickets during the week. And also what you wind up doing is you can also see tickets by the create day and time of day. So again, on a specific day, when you have a high volume, you can see morning, afternoon, and then you had the evening and overnight. So were there certain times of day that you got a lot of evening and overnight tickets? Again, one of the things that you'll you kind of see is that we're including some of the information about overall what people see. And then on page 2 of the new tickets, you'll see who is creating tickets and how do they create them. So tickets by contact. And what you'll see is we provide the actual employees and their employees who are creating tickets. Tickets with no contact, blank, are often associated with remote monitoring. So you can see there's a ton of tickets here that are probably associated with remote monitoring. They could be tickets that are being created by you that you don't supply a contact for. But again, they see that information and they see the volume of who's creating the most tickets. That's kind of important because you're talking to your customer, and it might be that they have one person who's submitting a lot of problems. Maybe it is a training issue. Maybe they don't realize that someone is having a lot of issues with their hardware. So knowing who is submitting the tickets at an organization is, again, a conversation you might have with the manager of the organization when you're meeting with them. Tickets by source is important. Again, the source of the tickets that are being submitted, client portal, monitoring alerts. Blank, again, in terms of source, is typically a monitoring alert in terms of it. It's basically tickets that are created by an outside, because when you create it within Autotask, it'll automatically specify and requires a source to be done. So this is usually an outside system like a monitoring system. What types of tickets are being created? What types of priorities? 97% of the tickets are medium priority. So basically giving me a good feel for what's being done. You can actually see 96.9% of tickets overall across my entire base are actually medium tickets. They're right in line with that. Were there weeks that had a spike in higher priority tickets? You can kind of see I had a spike in low tickets. But I really haven't seen overall a large spike. I have a few tickets here that are spiking up, but I haven't seen any kind of change in the volume of priority. Tickets by queue, monitoring alerts, largest, next by service desk, backup service, technical, patching. Whatever your queues are, it's giving you a feel for where they're submitting. If you saw product training or knowledge, again, talking about how queues are used within your organization and how you actually assign resources specifically to the queue to address an issue. The next is ticket queues by create time of day. And we did this primarily because the time of day, you'll typically see that it is the monitoring alerts that are the evening and the overnight. And you can kind of see that. I also saw that service desk had some overnight work. So I would probably want to look in terms of that capability. What types of tickets are being created? Tickets by issue type, tickets by sub-issue type. I can see tickets by configuration item. So we've included both the contact information, the client's employees. We also include the configuration item type. So if you're using configuration item types, this is a way in which you can explain to the you can look at for that client what types of problems that they're having. So you not only get the issue types, which will typically give you an indication, but you'll see the underlying configuration item types, so you can kind of see is that they've had most that are associated with workstation, application servers, SQL servers. You can kind of look at the breakdown of the tickets. The statuses for all of the tickets, most are completed. They only have like 3 open tickets. Good example of not a lot of open tickets that are being done in terms of the statuses. Who's working on the service? Who's been working on the service ticket? So, who in your organization, the technician, has been servicing them? You can kind of see Karen's been doing and Jason has been working. So again, this kind of for you're talking to your client, saying, you know, how has Karen's been working on your work? How has that been going? What about Jason? It allows you to personalize the service again. And then the groups is really kind of customized by you about grouping, in this case, queues, but doing a grouping and being able to group those together and talk about, again, most of them being in the monitoring alert group. Completed tickets shows you information about tickets closed by week. I can see the total hours, total worked hours that were spent to close out the tickets, so I can see how much time is being taken. Again, I have lots of alerts, but alerts typically can be addressed very quickly. I'll also see here that there's hours, 1.3 hours that are currently being worked on tickets that currently aren't closed. So those 3 tickets have an hour, 1.3 hours put on them. Distribution of total hours worked, again, giving you a feel for again, based on your level of grouping, most tickets take under 15 minutes to resolve. And in fact, overall as an organization, 95% of tickets overall take that. So they're right in line with the overall organization. I see ticket distribution by hours worked over the various weeks. I see the hours worked by configuration item type. So again, I can kind of see what's taking. SQL Server took longer than the workstations. I know I had a lot of workstation problems, but it's the SQL Server that took me the longest amount of time to work. You'll also see is that this also requires that a lot of your tickets actually have that number one, you're recording the time, but they're also not automatically being addressed in terms of an alert. So the volume of alerts doesn't necessarily drive into the volume of time. I also have hours worked by client employee. So you can kind of see is that the amount of time that Pete has spent in terms of the effort. And then we go into service level agreements in terms of seeing first response. So first response, I see that basically, almost 100%. I've had 2 tickets that basically have failed first response, and I see my distribution, and they were a medium ticket. So giving me that kind of feel. I see my average SLA hours to respond. Again, seeing that trend, but much like you do for your own organization, provide a distribution so you can kind of see why. Most tickets were under 30 minutes to get to, but you had a couple that actually took longer to get to. You actually had some that actually were taking between 1 to 4 hours to respond to, and that would drive that time up. I see SLA response by configuration item. Again, here everything is being responded to appropriately, but if they were not, you would actually be seeing red. And you could dive in and say, I'm having a problem responding to tickets of a specific configuration item or for a specific person. Next I have service levels are being delivered for the resolution. So in resolving, I can kind of see again, resolving is great. Actually, I've only had 6 that I've actually failed on. In terms of hitting the resolution target, I can see the overall graph of the time to resolve with the distribution times. I can see overall, in terms of it, everything is passing, and I can actually see the one time I failed, it was for Joe. So Joe had the failure in terms of it. So if someone's going to be complaining about response, it might have been Joe, but overall, when you look at it, that was, it looks like 1 out of 15, so not a bad response rate. I can then take a look at feedback in terms of in terms of survey information. So this is really kind of the most effective way, because this is what they're responding to the level of service. And so this is demonstration data we've put in, but what's the range of the service scores submitted? Well, I had 1 that was under 3. Everything's been higher than that. I've had a lot of 4.5 to 5s. I've had some 3 to 4s. I've had some 3 to 3.5s. Again, what I can look at is who gave me under 3. Well, Joe. That might have been 1 ticket that you didn't resolve quickly enough for him, and you gave that kind of distribution. So immediately, if I'm looking at this and I'm walking to a client, I know that Joe might have an issue because he gave me a low survey score. He also gave me a survey score of 3 to 3.5, and I can actually, or 3 to 3.5. So I can kind of see that kind of information here. And I can go down through and take a look at survey scores by issue type. So it was a computer laptop. I can say what kind of configuration item. I didn't have a configuration item on one of the ones that I had the low survey score on, but the other one was a workstation. Okay. I can take a look at it by queue. It was all in the service desk area. I can take a look at it by the tech, so the technician that was actually helping them. And again, for the under 3, Karen had been the person who was working on that ticket. And it gives me a good view to have that conversation. And again, this is really about having something of a deliverable that represents you to your client and allows you to have the conversation that might focus in on areas of improvement. in terms of maybe hardware that needs to be replaced or training that needs to be done, but also lets them know a lot of the work that goes on behind the scenes to keep them up and running. And that's all in the Clearance Client Service Report. So I'll come back a little bit and tell you some of the other capabilities. And one of the other capabilities that we talked about was the Batch Client. If you click on Batch Client, what this is going to do is just step through your accounts and create an individual PDF for them. And one of the reasons you might want to do that is this kind of several reasons. You might want to just have a series of PDFs on the first of a month or first of a quarter. It takes about 6 seconds to create each report, so you can do the math in terms of the number. It runs unattended, so it'll just run through and create those PDFs in the file folder. One of the examples that I used, and I'll go over into an Autotask, my Autotask, and show you an example here of why you may actually want to go over to my demo. And you can create the PDFs, put them up under SharePoint, and as an example, I'll just open up an account. And using the live link technology, you can open up any account or a ticket for an account and create a live link. And I just created one for Service Report. And the Service Report will actually launch a PDF view of that report. And then, in fact, this is going to be opening up in a new window. And then I get that report that's associated to it. And basically, we can provide that capability of creating the live link. And so not only for a deliverable to your client, you can use this as an internal resource that anytime you're having to work on a client, you can actually open up the last generated report, whether it be the monthly report, to just give you a feel for not what's happened in the last couple of weeks, but what's been trending over time for them and how's the service level been before you are either talking to them or going in. But again, at any time you could go into the workbook and create one that's on the fly for email purposes. Again, one of the things you see is that this is all client-centric, like I said, but you could, as the example, gone in and created one for an individual resource. If I chose, in this case, Alex as an example, and I'm filtering not on any account. If I go down through here, this information is all regarding Alex. It's no longer an account-centric for it. It is actually Alex's information. And I could go over and say, how's Alex been doing in terms of resolution time or first response time? We had an example when we were taking a look at resources where we knew that Karen had missed one. I can choose Karen. I can go over into SLA, and I can take a look at kind of how some of the feedback has been for Karen in terms of her feedback, and look at kind of some of the data that she's had. So that's another example where it's not just for an account. You can actually do and create reports across accounts, even though it's centralized to the account. Overall, I think that this is a kind of a good start for everyone. We'll be working through the beta to eliminate any issues. There are two other sections that we're planning on putting in, and that is a one tab that is by contact. So contact specific information. We have those in the other tabs, but the ability of having information which would show you a graph of distribution of priorities by contact. So what contacts are giving all critical issues or having the most issues. Those kind of reports, and then also one that would be by configuration item type. So those are the two that we're thinking about. But that kind of wraps up everything that we have here. And we want to thank you for your time today and for using Autotask. Thank you very much.